Over the years, it has grown, and I realize that it's something bad. Every time I see it, it has gotten what looks like to be a new section of skin sewn onto its face. I don't acknowledge it anymore, but my dog will, and so will my husband if he sees it. Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back. Today I have more of your own terrifying stories to read to you today, and I am nervous because one of these is from East Tennessee, and that is my birthplace, so I'm already not vibing with this one. You know what, let's just start with that one. Let's just start off with the story that's probably going to impact me the most. This story comes from Tiffany. She told me where she's from in East Tennessee, but I'm going to leave that out because these are small towns around here, and I just don't want to do that to someone. I grew up in East Tennessee, and we bounced around a little bit, but generally stayed in the area that I grew up in. My entire life, I've seen the same thing following me constantly. I believe it's one of three things: a demon, a walker, or a windy boy. It's around 8 feet tall, eyes are completely black except for the pupils, which are red. When I was really little, I used to think it was just an animal that wanted human companionship, and since it stayed under my bed, when I went to bed, I would be sure to leave my hand dangling down, so if it wanted to be pet, it could nudge my hand. At the time, it was significantly smaller, about the size of a Rottweiler. We had one, so I knew the size. Over the years, it has grown, and I realize that it's something bad. Every time I see it, it has gotten what looks like to be a new section of skin sewn onto its face. I don't acknowledge it anymore, but my dog will, and so will my husband if he sees it. We now live in West Tennessee, and I don't see it as often anymore, but I can feel when it's around. They said, I think it's 3 stories, but story number 1, the petting, I did that face a little too hard, my eyes are watering. Alright, this is the second story from Tiffany. Still in East Tennessee. For starters, let me say that I 100% agree with you that not all spirits are bad. My biological dad passed away from cancer caused by a genetic blood disorder when I was 16. I've always had a major sensitivity to the paranormal and spiritual world, and the night he passed, he came to let me know that he wasn't suffering anymore and that he was okay. He loves me. Immediately after he left, the phone rang and I got to the living room, and as soon as I walked in, my stepdad looked at me and asked if I was okay. He asked why I was up. It was probably around 3:30 in the morning and I had school the next day. He didn't know what was going on because my mom was still talking to my uncle and hadn't said anything to anyone else. My mom just looked at me and asked, "How did you know?" Then my stepdad looked at her really confused, and she said that yes, he had passed around 5 minutes before the phone call, but that is not the end of it. We would regularly hear his voice or see his shadow or even a transparent version of him for years. When my son was born, 5.5 years later, I saw him standing over my son's crib multiple times. Then when my son was around 2, he was playing with a plastic ball, the kind that would go in a ball pit, and he rolled it down the hallway and it stopped. Not a gradual stop, it was sudden. It rolled back to my son. The house is level, we used a leveler to make sure. Then it happened again. Except this time I looked from a little further away and I saw my bio dad, transparent version, playing with my son. My son thought it was just another family member. And here's the third and final story from Tennessee. Okay, I'm going to say this town because they don't live there anymore. While living in the Morgshauntings area, my husband and I saw what looked like a large deer. We didn't think anything of it. That is until we saw what it was eating. It was eating another deer. We looked back at the original deer and saw that its face looked very much like a large coyote, but it had deer antlers and a body. Again, this body was very large, probably more moose or elk sized, and it had a black liquid coming from both eyes, both ears, both nostrils, and its mouth. We just kept going because we both were thoroughly freaked out. That sounds a lot like in the film The Wendigo. I don't like that I just casually, it's fine. I hate saying that word. In that film, whenever the characters at the end of it go into psychosis, they have black coming out of their eyes and mouth. That's a really good movie if you guys haven't seen it. Alright, let's get out of East Tennessee for this next story and travel to Utah. I live in a town in western Utah, about an hour from Nevada's border in the West Desert. My house is close to the mountains that border the place I'm about to discuss. The history of Utah is quite dark, where the Templars slaughtered indigenous tribes. Ted Bundy also had a house here and had victims found here, and much more. I've seen many things, from shadows moving to spirits walking down the street or appearing all around me, to things that you'd see in horror movies or a fairy tale. I can't explain some of what they are. All over the state, you'll find some being or another. I've actually heard that about Utah, that there's just stuff everywhere. Well, anyways, the other night I was driving down the West Desert Road to a different county. It was around 10:30 p.m. and there was no one on the road. Normally there's animals running around, other cars, and it isn't too bad. But that night had a weird vibe. Out of nowhere, halfway through my drive, right where the cell signal drops, it gets darker. It's pitch black, no light, so it was strange to get farther than that. It felt heavier, and it smelled like death. I got a weird sick feeling in my stomach that said roll up the window and hit the gas. I don't usually ignore that kind of feeling due to past learning experiences, but for some reason I did. A half a mile or so down the road, it felt like I was being followed, but it was too dark to see. My hair was standing and I kept feeling eyes all around me. I glanced in my mirror to see nothing, but the feeling got worse. It was too dark to see anything. The headlights started dimming and flickering, which was weird, and the feeling suddenly went to level 10 from a level 5. Just when I'd rolled up my window, I saw a huge coyote/wolf-like thing that was easily as tall as my Elantra. It was in the road. It had pure white eyes and just stood there, growling, I think. I was going around 55 miles an hour and felt myself slowing down when I saw it. I punched the gas to 80 to 90 miles an hour trying to get to the town that was just around 10 miles away. The whole way I kept seeing tannish blurs by my window, shadows skipping in the light from my headlights, and hearing a high-pitched whine through my music. I started to feel sick and saw the town line. Mind you, this town is maybe 10 houses and that's it, with the next 7 miles being further and the city being 10 more miles beyond that. I crossed into the town and the feeling of dread hit me because I had to slow down. I was looking everywhere to see if I could see anything. Halfway into this little town, suddenly, I felt like a cool breeze and everything stopped. The smell, the whine, the feeling. There were no other cars or anything like that. It was dark, but it got lighter. I got to my friend's place and told them briefly about it, feeling uneasy talking. They told me numerous people have seen things like that recently and no one can explain it. Rather than taking the longer route on the freeway through Salt Lake, I took the same way. I just wanted to ease my own mind and try to rule it out as paranoia. I didn't see it on the way back home, but felt like something was watching. Since that night, I've been feeling eyes and feeling randomly uneasy at night. Hearing random noises outside my house, I try to rule out. Up until I heard the high-pitched whining last night, I was convinced that I was sketching myself out, but now I have nightmares. I hear it. I see it. I think it followed me. It's the desert in the middle of the night, so I thought my paranoia was getting to me. I don't know what it was. I've never seen anything like that ever, and I've seen some crazy stuff. I've never seen a skinny boy that looked like that, and I have no idea what it was. I'm open to any ideas or anything. The white eyes are literally following me in my dreams. Oh, I would be carrying around just like solid iron. That's so scary. Oh my god. My best piece of advice other than like protection measures is to just ignore it. Like, that's awful. Utah's wild. Are y'all okay out there? Because what did that Fred mean by, yeah, this has been happening? Your finest of pardons, please. This next story comes from Alberta, Canada. I'm from Alberta, Canada, and all of my occurrences happen in various different parts of that province. Throughout my life, I've noticed that out of my family, I seem to be the one with the most paranormal experiences. I'll be sharing the most prominent ones. I apologize in advance if these stories are a bit long-winded and sound all over the place. I have ADHD. I don't have much memory of this specific experience, but I figured it's worth telling. For context, my parents divorced when my twin sibling and I were 3 years old. My dad kept our childhood home while our mom moved into a condo. I wouldn't learn of this until many years later, but shortly after moving into this condo, my mom had said that she would be woken up to my sibling and I screaming in the night. When she came into our room and we would be crying and incredibly scared, she'd ask what was wrong and we'd tell her the old man in the closet. I don't know what happened in what order, but I know she's told me that she found what she describes as something along the lines of weird/gross stickers on the walls of the basement, which with her could mean anything from simple Halloween stickers to flat-out evil symbols, and eventually would catch a demon flying around her Bible on camera. She showed me the picture at one point, and I don't remember much other than the demon being a dark blue and looking straight up evil. Unfortunately, I do not have the picture, and I really don't want to ask her, as I've avoided bringing up this particular incident since the day she told us. I don't quite know for sure, but my best guess is that the people who lived in the house before us probably brought this demon into the house one way or another. My mom had brought a priest in to come bless the house to get rid of this demon, and we never woke up screaming again. Ever since this, I know she's taken great care to spiritually protect each home we've moved into. I haven't had many hugely notable instances in her houses since. The recent ones have been in our current house, though they could easily be explained away by other things. So whatever she's been doing is definitely working. The next incident would happen when I was around 12 to 13 at my dad's house this time. This would be in the house that was my childhood home, and as my parents' relationship prior to the divorce had been, at best, pretty toxic. My sibling and I's childhood was traumatic in a number of ways. It's safe to say that that house probably had a lot of negative energy in its walls. At this point in time, my sibling and I had moved into separate rooms and we were sleeping alone for the very first time. I took her childhood bedroom and my sibling took the playroom next door that turned into her room. I was extremely scared of sleeping alone, so we would open our doors and Dad would leave the hall light on at night so we weren't completely in the dark. I remember it started out pretty mundane at first, but what was initially a rather normal childhood fear of sleeping alone right after a lifetime of sharing a room began to turn sinister. I began hearing a whisper at night from an unidentifiable source. At first it was quiet and just one voice. I did the best thing I could at the time, which was ignore it and try my best to go to sleep. This wasn't helped by the fact that I am an insomniac and always have been. Over time, it would progressively get a bit louder. It wasn't loud enough to cause any immediate alarm to me. I figured I wouldn't be believed anyway, so I just continued to ignore it. However, one night I decided that the only way to get over my fear was to conquer it. So I chose, perhaps stupidly in hindsight, to be brave and close my room door fully as opposed to leaving it open. The whispering starts, as per usual, and again as per usual, I ignore it. Then it began to get louder, and louder, and louder, and louder again, until it was no longer one quiet whisper, but an entire chorus of whispers so loud that they may as well have been screaming. It happened so fast that I feared it became anything louder, something horrible would happen. I don't think it ever felt such complete and utter terror until that moment. So much that I didn't even take the time to climb down the ladder, but rather straight up jumped down to the floor around 6-foot tall loft bed. At the time, this was a very huge and dangerous height to jump down from, as I was decently small. I bolted to the door, swung it open fully and quickly. I'm surprised the force didn't cause it to slam into the wall. The moment I did, the light from the hallway poured into the room, and the whispering abruptly stopped. I don't remember if I slept that night, but I know that the incident traumatized me so bad that I refused to sleep in that room alone for years. I told my sibling and my father about it, but at the time neither of them believed me. I think the worst part of whatever it was, I know for a fact it was targeting me specifically. I got both my dad and my sibling to sleep in my room with me to see if they heard it too, but they never did. It never happened to anyone else in that room, nor did it happen when other people were in that room with me, only when it was me in the room, alone. I made my sibling sleep below my bed on a mattress for years because I was too scared to sleep alone in that room. Eventually, I got advice from a rather religious friend of mine to pray over the room, and it helped. But I always felt like I could hear noises coming from the vent in my room, so I kept several night lights on at all times to prevent the room from being shrouded in darkness. We've since sold the house and moved into an apartment where we thankfully haven't had any incidences. I recounted the story to my dad a few months ago, as well as telling him that I had told him at the time and he didn't believe me, though he didn't seem to have any recollection of this event at all. Once I was done talking, he was quiet for a few seconds before finally saying something along the lines of, "Thank God we're out of that house. There was something seriously wrong with that place." So thankfully he believes me now. I occasionally wonder if it might have been the demon from my mom's condo as a child or if it was its own entity. This experience was not related to any of my previous ones, but I know I was 12 when it happened. My dad used to take us camping in the Rockies, and this particular summer we had our grandma as well as some family from America come up to spend the week camping. More specifically, the American family was my dad's uncle, his wife, and my sibling and mine's 2 second cousins. The youngest of the 2 cousins was a year older than us, and her sister was a few years older than her. The younger one wore a hair in her ponytail for context. It was around 10 p.m. and we were all sitting around the campfire cooking hot dogs and having a good old time. We ran out of hot dog buns, and my grandma asked me to retrieve another package of hot dog buns from the trailer, so I got up to go grab them. It's worth noting that there was a decent amount of distance between the campfire and the trailer, and in between them off to the side was a tent we used for storage placed at the entrance of a wide path that led into a field. As I was walking up to the trailer, a shadowy black silhouette with a ponytail suddenly ran in front of me past the tent. I rationalized in my head that it must have been my cousin, as it was around her height, and just like her, it seemed to have a ponytail. But after I took a moment to collect myself and rationalize what had just happened, I continued walking toward the trailer, only for the trailer door to be open and my cousin to step out, returning from having been in the washroom. This all happened in a matter of maybe 10 to 15 seconds. Oh, the ponytail. Alright, let's get on to another one. Ever since I was young, I've interacted with the paranormal. Starting from the age of 3, my mother has caught me running through the halls of my grandma's old mobile home, and innocent joy radiating off of me while I played. Her and her friends found my happiness adorable and asked what I was doing. With a big old smile, I looked at them and responded that I was playing with my Uncle Ricky, the same uncle who had passed away at age 13, in the very same mobile home where I was only 8 months old. My mother got chills, and her friends moved away from that hallway, reasonably shaken up by the words that I had just spoken. This was just the start to a long life of incidents revolving around the paranormal. At around the age of 4, my family and I moved into a new house with my dad. It was a large built house in 1904, surrounded by farmland set on the side of a state route. This house always gave me an eerie feeling, and I was never quite alone, and left me on edge once I was finally old enough to be completely alone in the home. My mom was the first to have a true paranormal experience in this home when she was the only one there. She had ironically been sitting in bed watching one of those shows where people retell their paranormal encounters. My mom had seen one of the stories where someone claimed that they had begun to levitate from their bed, and my mother scoffed in disbelief. Yeah, right. She huffed, and in the distance the words left her lips. A candle was sent crashing into the wall across the room. My mother shrieked and immediately cried, "Okay, I believe." Another instance in the home was a toy guitar going off spontaneously even when the batteries were removed. One of my siblings or I were gifted a toy guitar that played music at the press of a button for Christmas. As any kid would, we played with it so much that my mom got sick of hearing it. She eventually put it in her bedroom so we couldn't play with it anymore, but that didn't put an end to the music playing. It would randomly start playing even when nothing was touching it or if it was turned off. My mom was fed up, so she took the batteries out, figuring that would finally be the end of it, but it wasn't. My mom ended up throwing it in the trash, and we finally were able to forget about it. The usual paranormal activities happened as well. Doors and cabinets opening and closing, frequently hearing footsteps when no one was around, and even hearing voices. The worst case I encountered of hearing voices was having my own name whispered in my ear while laying in bed at night. I would feel a hot breath on my neck and everything. I instantly shot out of bed, turned my TV on, and the bright blue screen illuminated my bedroom. I would see nothing, but that didn't stop me from running downstairs to sit with my mom. I rushed to move out of that house due to family issues shortly after graduating. I moved in with my at-the-time boyfriend, and I didn't have any more paranormal experiences for a while. That didn't last long, and within a few short months, I moved out and was living with a co-worker who offered me a place to crash while I got some money saved from my own place. This was a bedroom in the attic of an elderly woman's home. This elderly woman had a partner that had apparently passed away in the home, but before his passing, he had brought 2 dolls that were an elderly couple sitting in a rocking chair. These dolls were around 2 feet tall while sitting in the chairs. Now, before I continue, I'd just like to state that I've never had a fear of dolls prior to this. I even collected porcelain dolls as a kid and had 5 dolls that were all little redheads, meant to look like me, and a 2-foot-tall angel porcelain doll. The old lady doll never creeped me out, nor did it give me any kind of bad vibes. But the moment I saw the old man doll, I got this awful feeling in my gut. It felt like its beady glass eyes were staring straight through me. The guy I was staying with jokingly told me that its eyes moved once the very first time I came over and saw it. I immediately freaked out, and of course since then I just had a bad feeling about the doll, which he told me it was just a joke. One time after a couple of months of me staying with him, he decided to play a prank on me. He locked the door to the room we were sharing when I went downstairs to go pee in the middle of the night. What he didn't know was how terrified I actually was of this doll. A little background information. We had a single decent-sized room in the attic of the home and had to go downstairs through the living room and down a short hallway to get to the restroom. In the living room were the 2 dolls sitting basically in the center of the room, meaning you had to walk past them to get to the bathroom. Since I didn't like the one doll, I had a tendency to rush through the living room and into the bathroom, avoiding looking at the doll at all costs. When I was in the bathroom, I swore I was hearing footsteps that went from the living room down the small hallway leading to the bathroom and stopped just outside the bathroom door. I panicked and stayed in the bathroom for at least 10 minutes, too afraid to face what might be on the other side of the door. Once I finally gained the courage, I pulled open the bathroom door just enough to peek out and see nothing. I instantly bolted up the stairs, only to find the door locked. My heart was racing, and my mind was in a panic. I heard something from downstairs in the living room, and I started pounding on the door while crying for my roommate to let me in. After he finally did let me in and calmed me down, I asked him if he came downstairs after me, to which he said no. He just locked the door right after I left and explained everything that happened, and he apologized. After that, I would frequently see the doll's eyes move, and it even turned its head. At one point, the doll got moved to the side of the bottom of the stairs, and every night after that, I would hear footsteps going up and down these stairs. I felt like I was being tormented by this doll the entire time I was in that house. I constantly felt its eyes burning into me no matter where I was. It just had this smoldering presence that suffocated me. 4 years ago, we moved out of that house and into our first apartment, so I thought for sure that I wouldn't have any more paranormal experiences, and for a while I didn't. Then out of the blue, about 6 months into living in our apartment, the paranormal struck again. I was home alone washing dishes, playing music, dancing and singing along, when suddenly I felt this overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. Out of my peripheral vision, I saw this large, blinding white blur rush around the corner into the kitchen at me. I dropped the dish and the sponge in my hand and let out a yelp as I quickly turned around to see absolutely nothing. I looked for my cats to find them all peacefully sleeping in the bedroom. I even checked my front door to make sure someone hadn't broken in. I was so physically shaken after that. What explanation could have been for what I had seen, and in broad daylight no less? I was living on a top floor apartment and on a hill, so I knew it couldn't have been a reflection of sunlight off of a car or anything like that. This was a humanoid silhouette. It was just a bright white blur moving so fast that I couldn't even truly process what I had seen. Since that experience, I've moved out of that apartment into a townhouse, but I'm still in the same complex. I haven't had any major paranormal experiences since we moved into this apartment, but I do occasionally get the same feeling of eyes burning into me when I'm alone, and a feeling like I'm drifting out into space, but my oxygen supply just got cut. Like suddenly there's no oxygen left for me to breathe. Like I've got a 50-pound weight sitting on my chest and my bedroom closet gives me an eerie feeling. I try my best to ignore it and tell myself it's just the anxiety, that I just need to breathe. Should I be concerned? So if you haven't yet, I would definitely cleanse your space and definitely yourself. If you're open to an egg cleanse, that always helps me and makes me feel better. But I think that should help you. It just seems like you're super in touch with the paranormal side and things just kind of gravitate towards you, which is what happens to me. I don't necessarily think anything's bad, and I think the like heavy chest pain's definitely anxiety. But yeah, I would do a cleanse and see if that helps you. I was gonna read another story, but this video is getting kind of long, so I may cut it there because these were kind of long. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is a rambly part. The stories are over. If you don't want to listen, you don't have to. I have a new like goal. And I'm gonna post a YouTube video every other day for the foreseeable future. So I'm trying to like build up myself on here, if that makes sense. There's like a looming TikTok ban, and I know I'm gonna have to switch over anyways, probably. But yeah, I've always wanted to like be on YouTube anyways. That's always been like my goal to get here. So I thought I would do that. I wanted to do every day, but that's just a bit much for me, and I know I can't keep up with it, so I'll see you guys every other day. But that is all. Please send your stories if you have them to the email in my description, and just put YouTube in the little bar so I know you want them read here. And yeah, I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Cleanse yourself and cleanse your space, and lock your phone screens spiritually.